everyone. So let's dive in. I am going to read part of Nate's 12 step, and we're reading this together. I've read a couple pieces here and there, but for the most part, I'm reading 95% of it for the first time. So, talking about powerlessness, so blackouts. Nate said, I would walk to work, punch in, and walk back to the car and pass out. When I woke up, it was night and the store was closed. So that's one blackout that he specifically had. I don't have a date. Let me see if there's a date on any of this. There's not a date on any of this. This would have been before we met though. Anyway. So maybe 2013, possibly 2014. That's when he went to his inpatient treatment centers. So loss of control over amount use. Give a specific example of when, where, and how much you had planned to use and how much you did use. So Nate said, sometimes I would buy a 24 pack instead of a 12 pack so that I didn't have to waste a trip, but because more was available, I would drink more quickly. So because he had that 24 pack available, he drank a lot of it quicker, which increased obviously the consumption. Compulsive use. I would leave the house for work and buy 2 24 ounces of beer before getting on the bus for work. Gulped 1 beer before getting on the bus and then 1 before making it into work. Obsessive thinking. I always knew where every beer was being sold, where the establishments were within the radius where I was of the house, whether it was his house or his work. He called himself an alcoholic radar. Failed attempts to abstain. 2 months after my first hospital visit, I was dedicated. It says dedicated because I knew the consequences for my body, life, and relationships. Then I did the test beer to see if I was cured, and I immediately, almost overnight, fell into the same pattern, which I've seen this when he was 6.5 years sober, and he had one drink. It was, within 24 hours, he was waking up every 2 hours to go and drink. And that's after being 6.5 years sober. That's how, I can't believe the stronghold addiction had on him. Putting usage ahead of priority life areas. The need to drink to enjoy life or calm my anxiety took precedence over the fact that I already have liver disease. Continued use despite medical advice to quit. One doctor told me that my liver was, and I can't say that word because it's a cuss word. I'm reading this for the first time. Nate doesn't cuss. So, but basically his liver was F. Another said that if I had one drink at a party, my liver wouldn't automatically explode, but that one drink would put me back on the road to abusive use. Withdrawal symptoms. All of the above, all the time, except hallucinating only happened when I'm going through extreme withdrawals. I didn't know that. I didn't know he hallucinated during his withdrawals. Unmanageability. So family relationships. And remember, this is before we met. I don't keep in contact with them as much he said that he was withdrawing himself from his family. I scare all of them to death on a daily basis. Marriages. I have had several relationships where my partner wanted to pursue marriage, but I have either declined or purposefully sabotaged the relationship to avoid the idea. I think I have a pessimism and or aversion to marriage because of how traumatic my parents' divorce was on me. Which is amazing to hear this. Again, this is before he and I, before we met. So it's just amazing to hear. I shouldn't say, I keep using amazing. It's shocking. Shocking is a better word to hear this. I have lately been warming up to the idea if I found the right person. I don't have any children, but I am very good with them, and I have realized that at my age, most women that I date already have children. He and I didn't get married until he's like almost a year younger than I am, so we were late 30s, so 38, 39. Parenting, role modeling. Kids have always loved me, even if I have been drinking. I was fun, loving with children. I wasn't the funny uncle or I was the funny uncle or boyfriend. My ex-girlfriend's kids had never carved a pumpkin or made a snowman before. I was always a good father figure. Interesting that he mentions that, because obviously he was drinking during these times, and so a father figure is not an alcoholic. And interesting, he always had this thing where he wanted to carve pumpkins and build snowmen with the kids. Relationships with friends or peers. My use has sometimes caused me to be unreliable because my priorities were obviously not in the right place. Work, school. The only effect it had on school was that I lost my soccer scholarship opportunities when my drinking increased in college. I have lost many jobs due to the attendance problems due to alcohol use. Money. I looked at my paycheck as how much beer I could afford after bills. Sorry, the handwriting's pretty bad. After bills. Then when I lost my job, I would think, how long can I support my habit with my last paycheck? Health. In 2009, I had a seizure from hyposteria. I don't know what that word is. It's really hard to read his handwriting, / kidneys. And I was in a coma for 3 days. So I knew he had a seizure, but I guess I didn't realize he was in a coma for 3 days. Maybe he told me that and I just don't remember. I was sober for 2 months before I relapsed. 3 years of using later, I was hospitalized again. I had been vomiting blood for 3 days and had a near fatal potassium level. I remember this because he talked about this, and this is where the doctors had called him a walking dead man. Sorry, I keep changing this to get the camera a little better there. So legal status, driving privileges. I received a DUI once in Germany in 2000 at a checkpoint, blew a .13 and lost driving privileges in that country for a year. And he didn't get any here, which I can't believe he did not get any here, because when he drove all the time while drinking, all the time. So when I talked to the police officer after they found his body, I asked about a car because I knew he had purchased one, and they said that his car had been impounded because he left it in the middle of the street. But this was months prior, and they had called him trying to get him to come and get it, but he just wasn't responding. So anyway, and I have not seen I just left it in impound. They said it's not worth it to go and get it from impound, so I just didn't get it. Anyway, social/recreational activities. I miss weekly karaoke nights, but most nights would often migrate downtown, which would get crazy. I stopped playing on soccer leagues because I was out of shape from drinking. Eating, sleeping habits. Maybe one meal at night, but I would have to have been drinking so that I wasn't nauseous to have an appetite. Drinking to sleep was required. Then I would wake up to use the restroom and drink a couple more to get back to sleep. And that's how much he drank. And I do remember this, when he was drinking, he would wake up and drink his alcohol and then go back to sleep. Spiritual values. I always had spiritual, I don't know what that word is, but I didn't put a priority on it. Only now have I begun to reapply it to my life with a lot of big book and Bible study. Psychological and emotional health. How has your, and this is just a question, I'm going to read the question because his says all of the above. How has your chemical use affected how you think? Are you more rigid, thinking your own way? Do you have memory lapses, slowed thinking, negatively thinking? Do you feel guilty, ashamed, and angry at yourself, defensive, resentful, self-pity, or depressed? I've always been stubborn, which he is definitely stubborn, but and he says, but alcohol made me more set in my ways, which is very, very true. Watching how it affected my family and my physical and mental health, I have become much more humble. And that says all the above. He feels guilty, ashamed, angry, defensive, resentful, self-pity, and depressed. I'm not too sure that he's been more, I mean, he has been more humble, but in his active addiction, he definitely isn't. And one of the things, he's just a completely different person reading this. The alcohol has made him more set in his ways. I remember when I asked him, he was sober, and I asked him, so this was, I have to go back. He had a relapse, but it was very brief. I found a couple of cans, but I knew it wasn't the big relapse, so I knew a bigger one was coming. But I knew if I left him at that point that he would get part custody of the kids, and I did not want them in his custody because his relapses are so bad. And I don't have a picture here with me, but the hotel rooms, he just locks himself in hotel rooms. He goes into hiding. It's incredibly hard to find him. So anyway, and with that being said, he said, if ever you think that I'm drinking, go ahead and just do a breathalyzer. And I said, well, can I ask you? And then you would tell me? Just be honest. I mean, I won't be mad at you. Just tell me. And he said, assume I'm always lying. I will never tell you the truth when it comes to alcohol, ever. That's why you have to do a breathalyzer. And there's a bee right next to me. Oh, it went away. Anyway, and so that day, the last relapse, I went to do a breathalyzer, and he refused to do the breathalyzer. And he had just been driving with the children, and I didn't know where he was. And so I went out to the garage to grab something at the time I was working from home. I went out in the garage to grab something, and he was in there walking around in the garage, and the kids were in the car. It was very odd. And I thought, this is really odd. He's definitely been drinking. And he got the kids out. The kids went inside. So wherever, and there's the bee. Hi, bee. Anyway, so whatever he was doing, he had been driving around drinking with the children. And I don't know how long he was in the garage. And he does like to drink in garages. I don't know why. But anyway, and that's when I asked him to do a breathalyzer, and he refused. And that's when he hit me with the car. which again, I have that video, which I'll share. But anyway, next I'm gonna read his mom's testimony, but I will do that in my next video. So definitely make sure you like, subscribe, comment what you're looking for, whatever it is. Yeah, I'm sharing Nate's words, his family's words. So anyway, thank you for listening. Tune in for the next one.